What is your best my friend is dating a terrible person and nobody can get through to them story. I watched my best friend's wife, thankfully now ex, systematically dismantle him. It was horrible to watch. I was vocal about how much it bothered me and it drove a wedge between us, and some years passed where we didn't speak to each other. We have since reconnected and she is out of the picture. It was hard hearing him say, dude, you were the only one who told me it was a bad idea and I pushed you away, but I'm glad he saw the light. The guy loved bragging about what a D he was. Treated her like it and never seemed interested in her. Until he found out how rich she was. One of her dad's companies got sold and the news was public. So her dad couldn't keep his name off the Forbes list. Then, he publicly declared they're together. After 3 years of toying with her, at every family event he was at, he just treated it like one big networking bonanza. Doesn't seem to have a clear job, but claims he's in finance. Claimed to be working remotely while freeloading at her parents' place for 6 weeks, and happily treating all their household staff like they were his employees. We all tried telling her, and even though we're like sisters, she actually told me, it's okay if you don't like him. You don't have to. Her father reminded her that it's in their family constitution that any potential spouse must be thoroughly vetted by private investigators first. He gave her the courtesy of warning her that he was going to do it in exchange for her agreement that she won't tell him while the investigation is ongoing. She confidently agreed, completely believing he'd come clean. Yeah, the asshole was cheating on her. She was a mess for the longest time, but fortunately, she's fine now and married to the most awesome guy ever. Soon after getting together, she moved into his apartment. She turned his spare bedroom office into her music room. Next she turned his garage into her yoga studio. She never did yoga. She preferred his car but wouldn't let him drive hers, meaning there were many nights where he was stuck at home while she was out with her friends. She controlled his drinking. The few times he was out he was allowed 1 drink, which he usually drank. While she got totally rat-faced, she often stayed over at other guy friends' houses cause it's too late to drive home. She planned an elaborate holiday trip, which he paid for, to visit her ex. Relationship lasted a little under a year before she broke up with him, because he turned 36 and she only dates guys who are 35. My sister-in-law has always had weight issues, thanks to her parents who always called her little fatty growing up. At 21 she went rummaging through humanity's garbage can and brought home the first piece of it to show her any attention. Within 9 months of meeting him they were married and within a year she had his baby. This guy has it all. He's openly rude to her and her family in public, and in front of her parents. He has about a 5th grade education and 0 plans to improve himself. He has a baby with another woman who he never sees, and never tries to. He has a drinking and gambling problem. He also makes sure it's a his money her money situation, and gives all his money to his parents, who are better off, his nieces, and on booze gambling. So my sil, who does now make a lot, basically supports them. He insists on living in the East, most dangerous part of town, even though they've dealt with several break-ins and they could live closer to her parents for less than they pay now. Speaking of them, they're basically raising his baby because she works and he just stays out as much as possible. I figured they wouldn't last a year, but now I fear she'll never leave him and the kid is going to turn out super ducked up. Edit. By sister-in-law I mean my wife's sister married the piece of it. Buddy of mine started dating a stripper and was absolutely smitten with her. There's nothing wrong with that profession, but he was just kind of at a different place in life than her and we all knew there was no way it was going to work out. He can party, but she was absolutely wild. We all tried to gently point this out to him, but he wouldn't hear any of it and got upset with us for trying to sabotage his happy relationship. As things moved forward, she started having angry outbursts and literally just running away almost every time we'd hang out. Still, he persisted with the relationship. Eventually, she was ousted from her apartment for not paying rent. And to all of our dismay, my friend invited her to move in with him. I've never facepalmed so hard in my life. But he's an adult and can make his own decisions. It ended several weeks later when he came home to find she had thrown all of his clothes and belongings out the window onto the sidewalk in a tantrum and was trying to kick him out of his own apartment. He finally saw the light. Funny side note, a week before he met her, My girlfriend at the time and I were out drinking and she commented on how she'd always kind of wanted to go to a strip club. So we made the drunk decision to call a limo and go. It turned out to be the club my friend's ex worked at on a night she was a regular. So I probably saw her boobs before he did. When I was in high school, my best friend started dating a fellow that was known to be a pose, but she was in love and we couldn't convince her that it was a bad idea. He started beating her almost immediately, but that didn't deter her at all. He would take her car and pick up other girls, but they were just friends. She got him a cell phone in her name and ran up enormous bills that she couldn't pay. He gave her herpes, and we were like, okay, maybe now she will leave him. Nope. He was street racing in her car and smashed it up and she forgave him, even though she couldn't afford to get it fixed. He took all her money. We begged and pleaded with her to leave him and she said she would, but then secretly kept seeing him. Then one night we went to a community dance and he started strangling her in front of everyone. It took 3 huge guys to get him off her and the police were called. He ended up leaving her after that and she was devastated. The hold he had over her was crazy, and what was even more crazy were the girls that got together with him after all this happened, knowing fully well what he was like. Insanity. This might not be what this thread is looking for, but in this case the friend was me. My ex-wife would invite a couple of her friends over once a week for dinner. Whatever else she was an excellent cook. She was also sleeping with at least 3 other guys and carrying on an online affair. I suspect her one friend knew about it and tried to tell me about it over dinner on more than one occasion. She explained that she had a friend who was getting married, but her fiance didn't know that she was cheating on him all the time with a bunch of different guys. And I would say, well, why don't you tell him? And she would go, it's complicated. I know him well enough, but she's been my friend for years and I don't want to alienate that friendship. It was a recurring topic of conversation at weekly dinner. We were divorced by the time I realized she was talking about me. We had one friend in our group who was this introverted but sweet guy. He hooked up with a girl we called the troll dart. I don't quite know what he saw in her. Maybe he was just lonely, but she was unattractive, unpleasant, unintelligent, and most importantly, she was terribly domineering. Like she was telling him off and telling him what to do in public. I dread to think what it would be like in private. She was also cutting him off from his friends, especially female ones. They're married with twins now, and none of our friend group are in contact with him anymore. Last I saw he was his engagement party. They broke up and got back together 11 times. That's not just an arbitrary number I pulled out of my ass. I was keeping count and it finally ended with breakup number 12 when she took a trip without inviting him or telling him she was going, and posted a bunch of pics to Instagram of her with the guy she was cheating on my friend with. My sister-in-law dated this high school dropout pothead townie forever. In fairness, they started dating in middle school and were on again off again for years. No one, even her parents, could understand what she saw in this guy who had no background, no ambition, and no discernible good qualities. He was just the local neighbor kid who started creeping on my sister-in-law when they were young and would never go away. She just kept telling us we don't see what she sees in him. I roll. Eventually we just accepted that nothing we said was going to change her mind. And after a decade or so we got to know him and realized that he absolutely loved her with his whole heart and would do anything for her. He was actually really handy with a strong work ethic. He's great with kids and will be a great dad. Turns out, he realized early on that he loved her and it's actually a boy meets girl hometown romance. She saw all this in him the whole time and we never really looked past the surface. They finally got married a few weeks ago and I couldn't be happier to call him my brother-in-law. Oh, I had one of those friends back in high school. She and this other kid started dating all lovey-dovey for a while, but after a bit she completely shut down to all of us. It was like something inside of her died. She started saying how she wanted out of the relationship and how she couldn't stand him anymore. But for some reason she just never broke up with him. He got worse and worse with her over time. Started hitting her and threatening her. Eventually her parents and the police got involved and they broke up for like a month or 2. But then they just got back together. From then on she weirdly seemed to bounce back and forth between being super in love with him and happy that they're together, to looking all dead inside and seeming unable to stand him, and it just went on like that. He'd go too far. They'd break up for a bit and then get back together again over and over. We all tried to talk some sense into her, but she'd get angry at everyone, telling us it's none of our business and we should stay out of her life. I think her best friend got so frustrated with her over that she completely cut her out because she couldn't talk sense into her or help her, but she also couldn't stand to watch it go on. We lost touch pretty quick after high school, so I don't really know how she ended up. I want to believe everything turned out alright, but it's so easy to see a scenario where she ended up marrying that guy out of high school and spent the rest of her life miserable and trapped with him. He cheated on her multiple times. He was emotionally and physically abusive and he slowly turned her into an insecure, crazy itch. She once slapped me because we were in a club and he said something to me and I responded, but because it was loud I had to talk in his ear and she thought I kissed him. She moved countries for him, allowed him to live rent-free while doing nothing. Meanwhile she was working 2 jobs to support them. He'd break it in the house whenever they got in a fight. He brought girls back to her place and ducked them in her bed and sent her pictures while she's at work. They got pregnant and she got an abortion, but he didn't go with her or support her emotionally or financially. After the abortion, when they fight, he'd tell her she was a murderer and killed his baby. They're still together. 10-year week. They got together and she immediately took over his house, which she began referring to as her house. He would come home and find out that she had her father over and they two would actually remodel portions of the house without even letting him know. Dude was a commercial artist, so he had a small office studio in one of the unused bedrooms. While he was at work, her and her dad took everything out of his office studio, moved it to the basement and then moved the washer and dryer to that room. Then, apparently, realized that there were no ducts for the dryer and they needed some 220 outlets installed, so she called him at work pissed that his house sucked and he needed to get an electrician over there ASAP to fix this, which he did, paying the emergency rate. Was hoping he'd see the light. Unfortunately he did, but only after 2 kids and her forcing him to quit his good job with benefits. Not my friend but me. I was dating this girl and she was horrible for me, but I was blind to it. A few friends told me how different we were, but I always defended our relationship. We dated for 3 years. Only after we broke up did I realize how toxic it was. Edit. Thanks for all the texts. This is fun. Luckily my friend finally realized, but for a few years she was with this guy. She already had a baby before they got together, then not long after she got pregnant with him. Now there's a lot to this story. 1. Her daughter she had before they got together was diagnosed with cancer like a few months into their relationship. Now I hold my hands up. He stepped up to the point she called him her dad. But whilst going through this horrible journey, he'd talk to other girls online behind my friend's back. When she found out, she became super paranoid and the poor woman had enough to worry about as it was. Anyway, this went back and forth for a while. They both cheated on each other at some point. The relationship was toxic. Fast forward to 2013. Her daughter passed away at the age of 4. God, I miss her. Their relationship is still awful. Then finally the last straw. Brace yourselves. Now when her daughter was alive, she'd get a lot of charity money given to her from people. Kept it in a piggy bank, and given the situation, there was quite a bit of money in there. Turns out her now ex-boyfriend had been stealing her deceased daughter's charity money to fund his drug habit, and also stolen from his son's savings, leaving my friend with nothing at the time to spend money for her son's birthday. TL. Doctor, my friend's ex stole money from her deceased daughter's savings. That was the final straw for her to break up with him. I have a friend who dates guys she knows none of us like just for attention and then throws a fit when we state we don't like them. I'm talking storming off when we refuse double dates, dragging them to parties just to sit in the corner and make out with them, or worse, straight up straddle them on the couch, asking us why we refuse to hang out with them and then having more tantrums when we tell her why. She dates guys who have invalidated her gender and have wildly different views than the ones that she is absolutely radical about. Ones who refuse to communicate with any of us and vape just obnoxious amounts. And most recently one who she falsely accused of sexual assault. When these fall through, she then expects all of us to baby her, until a week later when she gets another despite sobbing about the last one a day before. She's a ducking disaster and I finally cut her off when she lied to me about having an eating disorder to get my attention. I suffered from an eating disorder from the time I was 12 to when I was 16 and she knows that full well and how much it affects me. A good friend of mine and our group met this girl at one of his house parties. My friend is a super nice guy, part owner of his family's successful business, and lives alone aside from his pets. We met his future wife at one of his parties, which were almost always just laid back and relaxing. Neighbors over etc. I still barely remember her real name as we called her the stripper from this party forward. She was in the basement with her shirt off dancing with her friend. My friend started dating her after even though we said it was a bad idea. Months later, still together, we get asked to be in his wedding. All the groomsmen asked the same question to him. Are you sure, man? Fast forward to the wedding. Bride and her family got into a physical fight at the reception. I have no idea why, but it was amusing to see the entire head table leave to help accept all the groomsmen because we knew she was an insane itch. So they got married. She quit her job to stay home. No kids, thankfully. She was just lazy as hell. He bought her a new car. She painted his entire finished basement this awful purple color, redecorating most of the house on his dime and with a horrible taste. We heard she might be cheating, so after some detective work, found her, caught her, and filmed her. He had the good sense to leave her, but I would guess she milked at least $40k plus from him in about 18 months. Luckily his dad made a prenup mandatory because of the business and saved him also. Dad knew all along. Girl I knew got knocked up by this dude who had a knack for catching assault charges and getting sent to jail and or prison. Despite his violent behavior, even toward family members, though not as violent as his full-fledged assaults, she was adamant about marrying him. Apparently, he wanted her to drop out of college and be a stay-at-home mom that he supported. Two things there. First, good luck doing that as a felon in this economy. Not impossible, but unlikely. Second, maybe I'm jaded, but to an outsider, that seems like obvious economic manipulation that this guy wanted her to depend on him so he could keep cheating on her and whatnot. After he got released from his latest stint, he cheated on her again and she finally wised up and dumped him. But she still constantly posts conflicting stuff on social media about how she loves him but also hates him. Dude was clearly bad news from the beginning. She seems to be doing fine as a single mom with family support, but pretty much everybody could see the writing on the wall except for her. Have a buddy that is with an extremely controlling woman. He posted one time on Facebook that he was actively searching for another job and as people replied with leads she started asking them what do they pay, how many hours will he work, etc. I told him I could get him a job with me working out of state but making 6 figures a year. Massive overhaul from his former position of working 90 plus hours a week for $500 700/week. The only catch is being out of state for a few months out of the year. He told me he wanted the job badly and hated his current job as a corrections officer so much that he would take anything to get away from it. Long story short, she said no. Made him get another job as a CO. Just at a different prison that paid a couple more bucks an hour. Oh, and the icing on the cake is when about a year later he finds out they are having a baby boy. He is a JR so he wanted to name his child my buddy III. Her response? No. I can't stand that name. They are now married and I want to hang around him more often. But she is so damn controlling and annoys me so bad that I can't hang out with her as well. Which of course means I can't hang out with him.